I came here to do. And so I made that decision to go to seminary to follow Jesus' first commandment, which is to love God. Those are the two commandments he gave us, love God and love neighbor. And as a seminarian and a lawmaker, I'm starting to figure out how these two commands, how they relate to each other, how they sustain each other. You need that inner life, which I feel like I'm cultivating at seminary. And then you also need this outer life of how does that impact your relationships and the work you do out in the world. Mm-hmm. And you really can't have one without the other, because if you do the second one, the work out in the world, you can burn out so easily, which I think I was about to burn out in that second term. You can burn out if it's not sustained by that love of God. And I don't mean God as that word is charged for a lot of people. I don't mean like a sectarian religious orthodoxy definition. I just mean that ground of your being, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I don't know if it answers your original question, but
what was the main struggle? Like what were you facing in the house that was causing you to have this crisis?
Well, so there were several bills. I mentioned the abortion ban.
Was it dealing with the human beings, though? Was it the actual?
So the bill. This was the straw that broke the camel's back. Toward the end of that legislative session, my Republican colleagues brought again, this is the way I would describe it, a voter suppression bill, making it more difficult to vote in the state of Texas. Again, Texas is probably the hardest place to vote in the country, just in terms of the paperwork, the requirements, the hoops you got to jump through.
How so, though?
There's a whole host of things. The fact that we don't have online voter registration in the state, when a lot of other states do. I mean, think of all the things you do online. Voter registration is not one of them. The IDs that now count for registering to vote or voting are very selective. So, for instance, if you've got a concealed carry license, that license counts as ID, which I agree that it should. But a student ID from a college or university doesn't count as an ID.
You have to get a driver's license?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got to go get a driver's license. And again,
what
for
about
someone
passport?
Yeah,
work,
passport.
Right?
But again, I didn't have a passport for most of my life, right? I didn't travel outside the country till I was, I was in my 30s. And so I didn't have a passport. A lot of people don't have a driver's license, especially older folks. So the point is that these rules get added on top of each other and make it even more difficult. What
are these rules? What's the reason for these rules? Is the rules they're trying to keep people that are non-citizens from being able to vote, right?
Well, not exactly. I mean, There is that concern. And here's where it kind of breaks down. The main concern is voter impersonation, which is the idea that I would show up to vote as if I was someone else, like I was going to go and impersonate Joe Rogan and vote for Joe Rogan.
That does happen, though, right?
Vanishingly few incidences of this happening,
right?
Because it requires
zero. Shouldn't there be zero instances?
Yes, of course. And Ken Paxton, decides to. He's our attorney general here in Texas. Decides to spend millions of dollars trying to find voter fraud, right? To try to prove that this is a widespread problem. And if he comes up with anything, it's usually like one or two cases of some mom who made a mistake on her form. I mean, the Secretary of State here in Texas, a Republican, said that our elections are safe and secure. So I'm all for making sure that our elections have integrity. I think you have to have that in democracy. My concern, though, is when some of these bills are adding unnecessary regulations on top of that just to make it harder for some folks to be able to vote rather than make everyone have the same opportunity to vote.
Who do you think they're trying to make it harder for?
I think young people. I mentioned this issue of colleges and universities and those student IDs not being eligible. 2, in Texas, you've got to change your registration every time you move counties. Not necessarily if you move within a county, but every time you move counties. This is something we don't have to do. Like there are logistical systems in place where we could track voter registration across counties. But think about the people that disenfranchise us, the people who move a lot, who moves a lot. Young people move a lot.
Yeah.
Every time you get a new job, get a new apartment, if you go to a college or university, then you are moving and your voter registration has essentially been erased until you redo it.
And young people are more likely to vote progressive and liberal.
I mean, I don't even know if that's true anymore because, a lot of young people voted for President Trump in the last election.
I think that's because a lot of young people felt very disenfranchised by some of the laws that were being passed by the previous administration and some of the actions they were taking to suppress freedom of speech.
I think it's fair. My point is, when Republicans in my workplace try to disenfranchise certain groups, I think it's almost they should give themselves more credit and believe in their ability to actually win over those groups, right? Instead of trying to make it harder for young
to them, though. You know?
Well, but my point is, instead of making it harder for young people to vote, why don't you just go out and try to win their votes? Clearly, Donald Trump was able to do it. And if Donald Trump was able to do it, I think more Republicans should feel they can compete for those votes.
Yeah,
competition
but again,
is a good thing. And
a lot of the reason why people were voting for Trump was a rejection of the previous administration and
fair.
The idea that this is a continuance, that the Kamala Harris administration would be a continuance of the previous administration.
Yeah, I think that's true. But again, I'm arguing for my Republican colleagues here. I do think there is something that Donald Trump tapped into, I think that other Republicans could tap into. And again, this is weird because I'm a Democrat making an argument for Republicans. The reason I'm doing this is I think when politicians feel that they can win over voters, we all compete to win over those voters, and that leads to better public policy, right? Mm-hmm. If you write off voters, then that leads to extremism in your policy making because you're only focused on pleasing your people.
Well, that was an issue with young men.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And so the fact that I do think the Republican Party can speak to this desire to be an entrepreneur. You know, Democrats too often, my party, we think that people are going to be happy with a handout. Mm-hmm. No one, I've never met someone who wants a handout, right? I mean, people want to work.
You've never met someone who just wants free money?
I actually haven't. No.
I have.
Have you?
Sure.
I should hang out with different people.
Well, there's a lot of people that just want the government to take care of them.
Here's the thing. I think some people may think they want that. Mm-hmm. And let's take the government out of it. Some people think they just want to sit on their couch, right? And I do too, right? When I'm like exhausted, the last thing, I just want to rot. My point is, after a while, that doesn't make you feel good.
No.
Right? Every human being, you need the desire to work, to produce, to contribute. I think that is a natural human urge that's like built into us.
That is true, but I also think there's a lot of people out there that feel completely disenfranchised, and
Agreed.
the idea of working sounds abhorrent to them. The idea of giving your life every day to something that you hate to do, and if there's enough money out there where that's not necessary, they would rather do that.
I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And I think that that means that we aren't creating enough jobs where people can find meaning.
How do we create jobs where people find meaning?
I don't think you and I have, and I don't want to speak for you, but I don't think of this role that I have as work, right? This is something that moves me every day to get out of bed and work on these issues. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't get paid to do this, so I have to actually have another job, but it's a whole different issue. But there's a difference between a career and a job.
Yes.
I think everyone that I've met, everyone I grew up with, wants a career.
Yes.
And that career can look very differently. That career does not have to be in a office, right? I mean, that career can be outside, can be with your hands, or that career can be at the home, right? My little sister just had her first child 2 years ago, my baby niece Jane, and she's stay at home. Madeline is, and she's spending so much time with Jane, and I have never seen my sister more alive than the work that she's doing, right? And my sister was a successful accountant. She worked at Alamo Draft House. She had cool jobs, but I think this is the career that she wants. She knows that she could do other things if she wants to, but this is what's giving her meaning in her life. And I want to have kids one day, so I definitely see that. There's work that I want to do. Part of why I'm going to seminary is that this is something I feel called to do. It's something that's giving me purpose and meaning in my life. I just think every single person deserves that. And I don't know the best way to do it, but how do we give everyone that opportunity to give the gift that they're meant to give, right? I mean, we're all here for just a short amount of time. We are all so different. There's literally no one in the history of the universe that is you, right? Joe Rogan, this collection of atoms and elements is only going to exist once. And thank God you found a way of how do you shine that light? How do you give that gift? But think of all the people across this state and this country who don't have a way to give that. What are we missing out on?
Yeah,
right?
we're
What
missing
the
out on a
cure for
lot.
cancer is trapped in the mind of a kid in a low-income school.
Right. But this is all great sentiment. But what are the actions that could be taken in order to give people a path to a career rather than a job?
So let's just talk about, I think we're all either thrilled or terrified of this AI future. And who knows what it's going to look like. It's probably not going to be apocalypse and probably not going to be utopia. It'll probably be something in the middle. But it is going to change how we understand work. It's going to change how we understand our jobs and our careers. It's going to eliminate a lot of jobs, I would imagine. And so this is now going to be a spiritual question about what does it mean to be a human being. It's one that we are not equipped to answer right now because in a lot of ways, we have thrown out the baby with the bathwater. And because of the problems with organized religion that we talked about earlier, we've just jettisoned the whole thing. So we're no longer having conversations about what it means to be a human being. But to get to your question about what specifically this could look like, I'm intrigued by some of the pilot programs on universal basic income and what they've provided. But I think what's missing in this idea is how do you provide people the support to go off and realize whatever dream has been festering in their brain for a long time. Almost like entrepreneurial grants, right? Of where we invest in someone's next big idea for an industry, for art, whether it is community work or nonprofit work or solving a community problem. My point is, my life shows me that people are they have this creativity and this imagination that we are not tapping into. And it is, and so much of that is trapped in people who are either in these meaningless jobs or are not, or either gone to, inadequate schools and therefore don't even get into a job where they could express themselves and give this gift. But I do know that it's out there, and that if we tap into it, it could be a game changer. So I don't know what this looks like, but it does seem like the disruption that's coming could be an opportunity. Again, back to out of crucifixion comes resurrection. Disruption is an opportunity.
Yeah, I would agree.
To do something.
I think it's also very dependent upon the individual. And I think the best thing we can give them is inspiration. And oftentimes the best thing you can give them is an example of someone who also did it.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of people that feel completely disenfranchised by the system that's currently in place now that I think is going to be upended by AI. So there is an opportunity for them to do something completely different. And the positive aspect of universal basic income is that, first of all, I think we could both agree that if an enormous amount of jobs just go away, that probably is the only way to sustain society. You can't just have people go poor and go hungry when we have unfathomable wealth that's being created by these same systems, right? So universal basic income, on one hand, has a lot of hope because there is this potential that you now no longer... So we're locked into this situation where you think that you're working and you have to work because you have to take care of food and you have to take care of shelter. And that this is what most people are doing with... most people in this country right now are working check to check. They're living paycheck to paycheck and they're essentially getting by. And any catastrophe, medical or otherwise, will eliminate all savings instantaneously, and they're doomed. And so what they're doing is just working, giving most of their life just to sustain whatever state they're in currently. And that's very frustrating for people because they don't think they ever get ahead, and they don't think they have any potential to get ahead. So if something comes along that takes care of that aspect of life, so if universal basic income can provide you with food and shelter, now you no longer have to think about food, you no longer have to think about shelter. Now you have to find meaning. The problem is, for a lot of people, there are so many distractions that are unproductive, like social media, like video games, like many things that people participate in all day long. And then you add in a factor of drug addiction and partying and a lot of other fruitless things that people participate in. If you only were living for the first 35 years of your life just to deal with food and shelter. And now food and shelter is provided for you. Now at 35, you have to sort of reformulate your view of the world and find meaning and find something. And maybe you're an atheist, so you don't find meaning in religion, and you don't have any desire to find meaning in religion. Okay, well, what do you do, and how do you educate these people, and how do you? I think there's going to be an upheaval, the likes of which we have never seen before, and there's going to be a lot of chaos, and it's going to be very, very uncomfortable for a lot of people. I think we're going to deal with unprecedented levels of addiction, whether it is with drugs or with fill in the blank, whatever gambling, whatever things that people get addicted to, because I think people are going to look for thrills. They're going to look for something that entices them, that gives them some excitement, because they're just getting a check every month. Yeah. Unfortunately, just the way humans are wired, that's not good for us. We know that from lottery winners. Yeah. Like, people get an enormous chunk of money. You might win $200 million. Yep. You hit the mega bonus, whatever the hell it is, and then you're living in hell.
Yes.
For whatever reason, you don't like it. You now find yourself surrounded by people that are trying to take money from you. You feel like you're a target. All the people that you grew up with and all people that know now looking for handouts, and it gets really crazy. And most of them wind up penniless within a short period of time. Yep. I think it's like, how many years is it where most lottery winners wind up broke? I think it's like less than 20 years, even when they have enormous amounts of money.
Yeah.
So, like, the only thing that you can do for those people is to somehow or another inspire them to live in a different way. Yeah. And I don't think that's a function of the government. I think that's a function of individuals and of inspirational people that can provide some sort of an example that differs from what they're surrounded by.
I agree. And so if we approach this when it happens, which I agree it's about to happen, and I don't think any of us are ready for it, if we approach it as a technological problem or even an economic problem, I think we're missing the full picture here, because I do agree with you that it is primarily, first and foremost, a spiritual problem. And what I do know about human beings is that all of us ask these questions. What does it mean to be a human? What is all this about? Where is my life going? Why are we all here? Right? Late at night, I can assure you, almost everybody has asked those big, deep questions. That is essential to being a human being. Whether you're religious or not, whether you're an atheist or not, we all do struggle with these ultimate questions. And I think what's borne out over thousands of years of our species' history is it's best to wrestle with those questions in community.
Yes, I would agree.
Because right now, especially on my side of the aisle, where religion has declined among certain populations, there's this tendency of like, well, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual, which I'm very open to people who say that, and I understand where they're coming from. But you want to be careful that it is not private spirituality only, meaning that it's only something that you own, that only impacts you and has no relation, no connection to other people. I do think we've got to be a part of communities where we ask and struggle with these questions together. It can look like a church or a mosque or a synagogue. It could also be a book club, to be honest, right? I mean, or a podcast, right? Like this space, in a lot of ways, for the whole country, has become a place where people are having these bigger conversations that aren't just about your job, aren't just about the current events of the day, but something deeper.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to need that now more than ever. And right now, we're not equipped.
No, I agree too. And there's also a lot of people that don't have a legitimate in-person community.
That's right.
That's part of the problem too. And and the people that do reject the concept of religion, finding an in-person community that doesn't turn into a cult, right. Which is also a problem.
Yeah.
Because generally these in-person communities are led by charismatic people who tend to want all the glory for themselves and tend to want to be praised and tend to want, it gets real weird sexually. It gets real weird with control. And then they impose rules on the group. It always goes sideways. There's not a good example of a new religion or a new cult that's been formed. They're like, oh, those guys really nailed it. You got a benevolent leader who really just cares about everybody else, who wants the best for everyone. And I think, weirdly enough, podcasts do fit into that space for whatever strange reason. If you can find someone who really does profess these thoughts that, like, generally you want good for other people, and you genuinely want the world to be a better place, and you genuinely don't want all this for yourself. You genuinely want people to do better, and that you enjoy it, and you take real joy in watching people succeed and get their life together, and find purpose. But that's rare. Most people are selfish.
Yeah.
And most people, most people also feel suppressed, and they feel dismissed most of their lives, and they feel suppressed by larger organizations or more powerful people, more powerful groups. So when they do get into a position where they have power of their own, they want to exert that power on others, because this is a pattern that they've grown up with.
Totally
unfortunately.
Agree. Well, and everyone contains multitudes. Mm-hmm. So we are all selfish. I completely agree with that. But I also think we're all selfless too.
Yeah.
Like, it depends
we have the
on
potential.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on whatever situation a person is put in, and what roots someone has to draw upon. And it's why I feel so lucky that I was brought up in a faith tradition that really emphasized my own experience as a validator for faith, because what you just described of a pastor or clergy consolidating power is something we see all too often in organized religion. And so if you don't empower your congregation or someone who is seeking answers to check everything based on their experience and use that as a measure for what's true and what's good, then you make people dependent on that one guy.
Right.
Which is way too much power for one person.
Too intoxicating.
Right. It has to be, you have to use your own life as a way of saying, like, does this work for me?
Right.
Or does it not?
Right.
Does this ring true with everything I've lived through, or does it not? Trust yourself in some ways.
But a lot of people don't have a reason to trust themselves. They don't have confidence. They don't have a history of overcoming adversity and obstacles, which is also difficult.
Yes.
And this is also the part of the problem with meaningless jobs. Like, meaningless jobs that don't give you a sense of purpose, they never develop your feeling of accomplishment. So you just exist. And then you like, again, you find yourself 35, 30, I don't know why I'm coming up with that number, but this is like a point of no return where, if you haven't had a family by that point, and you haven't had, real love and relationships by that point, now your body's starting to get tired. So now you don't have the energy that you had when you were 20. When you were 20, where you could get 4 hours of sleep and just still show up and go do things, and you had the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to quit this thing that I'm doing, and I'm going to go pursue some completely different thing because I think I can do it, because I'm young and brash.